We do have a quorum, so has anyone had an opportunity to look at the minutes? Minutes of the last meeting?
I'll move the minutes.
Okay, the minutes are moved. Is there discussion?
Representative Cleaborn moves the minutes.
Representative Cleaborn moves the minutes. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? The motion. Oh, good. Thank you. The motion prevails. Before we start, though, I want to let people know we have a new member. Councilmember Goodman was unable to work this into her very busy schedule given our meeting time. And so Mary Paddock is our new member from as an LCC appointee. And she comes to us with a long history of work in the communications field. She's worked in that arena for the University of Minnesota, for NPR, others. She's also worked in government and several state agencies, also the Office of Mayor Sharon Sells Belton in Minneapolis. She is the founder and has been a leader in her neighborhood organization, Cedar Isles Dean in Minneapolis, and also is one of the leaders of the Lakes and Parks Alliance, which is an organization that's been working on the issues around Southwest Light Rail, particularly the routing decision that was made on that, and so has also testified numerous times before the state legislature on metropolitan governance issues. So is no stranger to the issues we're discussing, and actually testified last week. And I also wanted to mention that she's on the board of directors of MINCOGI, that's the Minnesota Coalition on Information, Government Information, and has already dove into that question, some of the issues that Representative Kosnick raised last week. She's already helped us this week on that, and we'll be talking a little bit more about that later in the meeting. I don't know, Ms. Paddock, if you wanted to add anything, but we're very happy to have you.
Well, I'm happy to be here, guilty as charged.
Okay,
Thank you.
Great. So our first item of more substantive business besides the adoption of the Cleaborn minutes motion is the last in our, Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to welcome Mary Paddock as well, but more importantly, I wanted everyone to know that it's your birthday today. Happy birthday.
Thank you, Senator Dibble. Thank you. So maybe if we have some time later, I'll tell a little story, but we're going to dive right into our agenda now. And I'm very happy to welcome Commissioner Mary Liz Holberg, a Dakota County Commissioner. Members, you'll recall that in I believe our first meeting when we were brainstorming ideas of what people wanted to hear about, we discussed and agreed that we would want to hear the existing reports that have been done recently about Met Council governance. So last couple of meetings ago, we heard from the legislative auditor, and then we also heard from the Citizens League. And then the last of the three reports is the most recent one. You have this in your packet. It's the Blue Ribbon panel that was convened by Governor Walz. And I'm so excited to have Commissioner Holberg. She, many of us know her as a former colleague in the state legislature. Very interestingly, she got her start in this work, public work that involved the Met Council in 1989 when she was on the Planning Commission in the city of Lakeville. Also then was elected to the city council in Lakeville. And I believe 1998, you were elected to the state legislature and served as the chair of the Transportation Committee, where, of course, she became very familiar with the Met Council and its budget, although was quite familiar with it prior to that. Chaired the Ways and Means Committee, garnered so much respect on both sides of the aisle. I've met her over 20 years ago. She's been a mentor to me. And we're really just excited to have you. And so now as a Dakota County Commissioner. And so Commissioner Holberg will go through the Blue Ribbon Report. And I've also asked her, just given her wealth of experience with the Met Council governance-related issues, just to give us some of her insights and even thoughts, advice as we move forward. So it's not just her presentation around the Blue Ribbon panel, but we've also asked her to share with her some of her thoughts as we move forward. So welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record, and we look forward to your presentation.
All right, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. My name is Mary Liz Holberg. I'm here mainly as the chair of the Governor's Blue Ribbon Committee on the Metropolitan Council's Structure and Services. So at least in this part of my presentation, and at no time today will I be speaking on behalf of the Dakota County Board or representing any positions of the Dakota County Board. I need to make that clear up front. And at some point, I'll probably veer off my role as chair of this and expound a little bit, just on my own, kind of winging it. So I think if there's no questions, I'll just get started with the PowerPoint. Actually, this is the first time I've actually seen the real report. The whole committee was done virtually during COVID. Every meeting was on Zoom. We met, I think, 10 times, never ever met in person, and I never actually got a real report, so I at least picked one up. So at least I could say that I've seen it and held it, and kind of, it was odd, but in preparation for today, the thing I guess surprised me the most is even since that report was published, a number of the recommendations have actually come to fruition, and I'll point those out as we move through the findings and the recommendation. So let's start, and I'm going to see which, right there, okay. So, as you can see, this was established by executive order. The 3 items that we were to address are on the screen. The group, as you can see, is a wide range of members, a nice mix coming from past chairs, past administrators, the business community. We even have somebody from a professor, so people that used to work at MnDOT. So it was a real eclectic group. And I guess we had a total of 8 meetings. So you can see during the time that we met, we took information from a variety of sources. Some of the advocacy groups we heard from were the Citizens League, which I know they were before you at your past meeting. The League of Women Voters has been interested in this issue for a long time. They weighed in as well. And then we moved towards our findings and recommendations. The report itself has a variety of recommendations and findings, and in some areas, 2 of the 3 areas, you'll see reflected some minority opinions. I have to confess that I generally fell in the minority opinion column versus the recommended findings, but I will also point those out as well, but they're contained in the written report, but not really included in the presentation that you'll see here. So the findings on the role of elected versus appointed council, you'll see here that there wasn't a lot of support for an elected Met council. I would think that bullet number 3, I kind of took issue when it was decided as a finding. I always felt that there was at least a substantial group of local officials that weren't happy, but that was the consensus of the group that it wasn't a majority but I think that the reason that we're sitting here today is maybe that has changed in the last couple of years. And the minority report opined a little bit on the problem of including elected would avoid kind of that tension of whether it's the governor's agenda or the region's agenda, and also would mitigate abrupt changes in policy or direction, maybe provide a little more continuity and be the council being less vulnerable to the whims of a particular party or agenda, given the change in whoever is sitting in the governor's mansion. So they did provide that for a statute for staggered terms supporting that. And then there was some discussion around the nominating committee. I think that there's some opportunities there. And some of these, the thing about the staggered terms, when I was doing my research today, what I found funny, well, maybe not, it's really funny, but interesting, maybe a better term, is that it showed vetoes by governors. Governor Carlson, Governor Pawlenty, Governor Dayton, and Governor Walz have all vetoed Met Council reform bills over the years. Of course, Governor Ventura being the only one in the last how many years that didn't, and whether or not he actually got one on his desk, I'm not sure, I can't recall. I was a newbie in those days. Relative to the MPO, and I think this is probably an area where there's a lot of opportunity for reform and a lot of consternation in the process. And as a matter of disclosure, I have been on the tab, I think for 4, if not 6 years now. But there was questions about the legitimacy of the tab. There's been lawsuits. You can see the findings that the group found that it was legitimate. We also explored the federal standards or what it would take to redesignate. Quite cumbersome, a big hill to climb, probably not feasible. And that it did serve an important role in the planning process. The recommendations around the MPO is that you could increase the voting in order to pass things to 60% instead of a simple majority. So this issue of trying to develop a consensus agenda that reflects the need of the region as a whole is what was struggled with. So a higher threshold for passing things, the name taken advisory out, maybe cosmetic, but given that we understand, and then the minority positions around this recognize the difficulty of the reform under current constraints, but still some questions about the validity, recommended some clarification from Congress and presented other voting strength options to consider, such as, at this point, there are 4 agency members, MAC, MnDOT, PCA, and Met Council. You could make those advisory, so you'd take away another 4 of the government appointees and the voting strength of the tab. Okay, this one is on the delivery of regional transit service, and this is where we have seen some progress relative to the changes in funding, and also making the Metro Transit a forecasted program. There was a lot of discussion around the opt-outs of suburban transit, how they fit in, how they're held accountable, value added or not. And so struggled with some of that. And so the recommendations around that, you'll see the first 2. If I knew how to do PowerPoints, I would have put like check marks by them. I have the check marks on my cheat sheet, but I had no clue how to put check marks on a PowerPoint. So, but the first 2, I think, have been accomplished. And then I think where you really get into the meat of it is the 3rd set of recommendations in this whole issue of how is it run, lack of standards, of performance standards, how the resources are distributed. Those are perennial questions, problems that if people don't feel like they have a seat at the table in solving the problem, it gets really hard to get a consensus around what the right answers are. And so it's kind of a symptom of some of the issues with how things are currently operated. So you can see in the recommendations, again, the long-term funding that's been taken care of, at least on the transit side of things. Look at different governance options and this whole issue of outcomes, develop outcomes measures. I was part of CTIB during the dissolution. I could show you the scars from that. That was pretty brutal. So we've had this lurching back and forth. There is, and I, have two transportation finance chairs here that I think would agree with me that just over the decades, how the whole system came to be, what things were funded or not, where money went or not. It's just been very torturous, and there's got to be a better way to make that happen. And then this full evaluation, at least every 5 years. In that recommendation, there was a thought that by doing that, first of all, we're not even sure, we weren't able to get good data across the different systems from suburban transit or opt-outs, like simple things like, average cost of passenger per mile or, subsidies per route. There should be some kind of standardized reporting or measurement or data collection around the expenditures across the transit system. So then you could begin to form criteria or measurements to begin to evaluate where to most effectively put your resources. And then that might in turn give you some insight or provide some insight into the different models of suburban versus metro transit governance, what's working, what's not, what makes sense, where do we have redundant service, some of those kinds of issues. So, any questions on the report itself or what I've said thus far? And then I have a few other things that I would add when I take off my blue ribbon committee hat.
Yeah, we want to definitely hear that. So we'll start with Representative Koznick and then Commissioner Bigham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome to the task force. Good to hear from you. You had mentioned that the task force had talked about the suburban transit providers and some redundancy. We've had some issues in our area with competing for services and that. And in light of being post-COVID and the ridership issues that we've had and the change in being more remote, was there particular recommendations? Is it still necessary to have suburban transit providers, or should it be under MnDOT altogether, or under Metro Transit and maybe flex them in at some point with that? Was there much discussion about that or recommendations to improve efficiencies in that area?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Chair and my representative, Koznick, we didn't have the data to be able to begin to answer those questions. There are things that certainly are problematic. More recently, we're having issues in that we can't get Minnesota Valley Transit Authority to honor the coal cards that we're providing to our shelter folks. My understanding is that Metro Transit has offered to actually put in the readers. To me, that just would scream that we got an issue, that if this resource of using transit's available but not available, given if you're getting service in an opt-out, we have an unbelievable situation in Dakota County where the Minnesota Valley Transit Authority, and it's going to sound like I'm beating up on them, but it's the system I'm most familiar with, owns the Apple Valley Transit Station. When they lost the contract for operating the Red Line, they actually put barricades out on the county road to not allow the Metro Transit Red Line bus to have the passengers get on and off the bus right outside the door to the transit station. And the compromise is that the Red Line buses actually park further north of the actual building. I mean, that's really indicative of systems not working together or well. But until we're able to force some type of reporting, maybe conditioned on funding, that they have to provide certain standards and reports in order to receive their funding, I don't know that you're going to be able to compare apples to apples without some kind of meaningful data collection.
Thank you, Commissioner. Representative Koznick, did you have a follow-up? Okay. Commissioner Bingham.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, you said that Commissioner Holberg is a mentor to you. She's a mentor to me, too. This has been an issue that we've worked on since I was on the board the first time and then left. And actually, one of the issues in the particular subject we're talking about now is we were successful at. And you mentioned you wanted to talk about some of the things that the legislature actually has done on it. And one of them was significant, and that was shifting the Metro Mobility line item to the base general fund. And we did that, what was it, Chair Dibble, probably 5 years ago, 6 years ago? Two?
2020, it was the 2021 finance. Bill.
Okay, so that was significant, I think, in transparency and understanding, helping the stability in the budget for that really key focused, sorry, time goes really fast, folks, sorry. And so, and to Representative Koznick's point, I think the other item and recommendation out of this section was we need an independent entity that is going to audit the opt-out and making sure that the regional systems are on time, on schedule, that everything is really being held accountable, and we don't have that. And that is one of the things that you've found in it was a recommendation. And I would be interested in hearing your thoughts on that too. And so the first part, to be a little more articulate for you, what were some of the successes that you had mentioned you wanted to talk about? And then two, if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about what you think the benefits would be to have those audits, to talk a little bit about how I think it would provide more transparency, having an independent firm or somebody looking at not only the opt-outs, but the actually Metro Transit, if they're going to continue, if in the future they are operating transit, that there be an outside audit to make sure they're on time and on schedule and providing the services that they need.
Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioner Bingham. I think I kind of expounded on it already. You need a valid data set. You need reporting. You need ability to evaluate. And because we don't even have that, you can't get to the step that you're talking about. But the recommendation definitely said at least every 5 years there should be a deep dive. But I believe it could happen more frequently. And then if you actually had performance standards, so this is pre-COVID, the red line actually had a higher per passenger subsidy for a 7-mile trip than the North Star subsidy, which is the poster child for inefficiency. But, I mean, and 2 months ago, coming home from an early morning Richfield meeting at 9:15, 9:30, the Red Line bus going north on Cedar, just south of the Mall of America, was empty except for the driver. And of course, that was one of the big reasons why this was going to be so successful, is all the people that had to get to the Mall of America to work retail or restaurants or whatever, and for the 9:15, 9:30 bus to be empty. I don't know what the ridership, but there's no reason that these figures couldn't be tracked and posted and evaluated in a more transparent. My fear is that now that there is so much money, that you can fund a lot of things that may or may not make sense. And it really, as somebody who's more fiscally conservative, I've never seen any more than 4 people on an Orange Line bus. When and that's where I see it along the whole corridor. This just isn't, at the end in Dakota County. But we see that the Met Council continues to just have a plan, and this evaluation piece just never gets put in, and so we continue. We've got a gold line coming, and it was problematic to me prior to pandemic, but if you look at how commuting has changed, in my community, I don't know anybody that used to ride the commuter bus 5 days a week to work downtown that will ever do that again, ever. And I actually took the time this morning, it was out of my way, but to drive through the Park and Ride, the Kenrick Park and Ride, which that particular commuter route was like the gold standard of the system. It had the highest fare box recovery of any route in the whole system, with over 70% fare box recovery for the operating costs. We were beginning to have talks about expanding it. It has 3 levels. At this time, it's barely 1 level is full. And my understanding is that the current trend for downtown office work, if you will, a Wednesday would probably be a high point, given the days of the week that people are likely, if they do go in anymore, to go in. And so I'm kind of getting off my blue ribbon hat here, so maybe I'll take that off and just speak on behalf of myself, no other organization. But what concerns me the most currently is that we, as a region, a metropolitan 7-county region, are not only competing with other regions across the country, but we now are competing with the rest of the state. And in the last population updates coming out of demographer's office, post-pandemic, the 5 fastest growing counties in Minnesota are outside the 7-county metro area. That's unusual for my recollection. And it's Wright, Sherburne, Itasca. I was going to look them up again. Cass is one, which that's kind of a different thing. But 3 of the 10 fastest growing counties in Wisconsin border the metropolitan area. We need to be very careful that what we're doing in the metropolitan area is not forcing what we're trying to be. Maybe I shouldn't say we. The goals of the region have always been to manage growth and resources and have planned development and extend the sewer and water lines only as needed, having the right balance of available land and thoughtful planning. But if you today go to Lonsdale, Montgomery, New Prague, these areas are booming. And it is no longer, when you look at the number 1 predictor of transit ridership is the price of gas over the decades historically. You can do all the things you want, making things wonderful, but the highest predictor is the cost of gas. And when we saw gas spike to $4 a gallon last year, you didn't see a spike that you might in past times. So I think that if we as a region fail to recognize these changes in how people work, how people live, where they want to live, something that was quite alarming to me in the last set of figures for populations of the city. Met Council updates city population on a yearly basis. And so Dakota County as a county, 6 of the 7 counties showed population increase, 1 showed a decrease. But Dakota County went up 5,103 individuals. Between Lakeville and Rosemont, they exceeded that number. And so then you start looking, okay, what cities lost population in Dakota County? In Dakota County, the cities that lost population were Apple Valley, Inver Grove Heights, South St. Paul, Mendota Heights, and a few townships. So even in a microcosm of Dakota County, as a county commissioner, I need to know more. Because as much as people think, you know, that a community like Lakeville loves all this growth and development, it's too much. It's very hard to handle. It presents a whole nother set of problems if you don't have the resources to upgrade your roads and intersections. We're, you know, just built our 11th elementary school. There's plans that we will likely have to soon build a 4th middle school. But I feel like so often the goals of the Met Council come from maybe lack of a consensus of the needs of the entire region. And to the degree that we're not very mindful right now of the changing dynamics and what people want and how they live, and making plans 20 and 30 years out, we could, if we head down the wrong way, it'll be hard to come back.
Thank you, Commissioner. Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and just two quick questions. Well, maybe one quick question, one not so quick. You were limited to looking at only two models, appointed versus elected, right? You couldn't consider a council of governments?
Commissioner.
I don't think that we were limited. We didn't spend a lot of time on council of governments because it involved electeds. You know, it was kind of like a subcategory under elected. But I think there are ways to get at that issue that weren't included in the report, and what that if in fact you want to mitigate or eliminate the conflict of the governor's agenda versus the region's agenda, then what needs to happen is the appointment process has to be removed from the governor's purview, or how you populate the Met Council. So instead of having the governor make recommendations, you could have elected officials in the various regions or sub-regions pick their own. So if you don't go as far as elected, which I think would be very difficult, you could make those appointments come from the bottom up, if you will, as opposed to the top down. In my case, we're very unique in that our Met Council representative goes all the way back to the Plenty administration. She's very good. She does her homework. She shows up to community meetings. I've heard growing concern about certain Met Council members maybe not performing to that standard. You could set standards of performance that if council members don't attend a certain number of meetings, I think in our case, if you're appointed to a Dakota County position, if you miss more than 3 meetings in a year, you're removed. You could also raise voting consensus on the Met Council to a 60% threshold. I mean, right now, the governor makes appointments, and the governor appoints the nominating committee, and, I mean, you could totally flip that upside down and make that be from the bottom up. Absent that, you could have a recall or a removal process if the governor, appoints a real stinker by a vote of, 80% of the county and city elected officials in that person's district, they could be removed. I mean, you just have, I think it would be very difficult to get an elected Met Council, and I don't myself personally think that's the solution. I did recall Representative Biskin's bill, and I had to look that up. And oh, by the way, I am reusing my old letterhead still. But this bill from March of 2001, the summary alone is 17 pages long. The bill itself was over 250 pages, and that was a bill to eliminate the Met Council, and his bill moved various responsibilities to various state agencies or organizations, one being the Office of Planning for the state, which no longer exists. So probably not a good roadmap for if you wanted to get rid of it today, but I think there are a lot of things that you could do. I personally believe moving TAB under the umbrella of MnDOT would make a lot of sense. MnDOT has the engineers, they're much better with data. They coordinate the road system and are the implementers for that, certainly statewide. But we really, I think, find ourselves at a disadvantage in the metro in getting our fair share statewide, absent. We don't have, the Met Council never goes to bat for the metro versus greater Minnesota. The Met Council goes to bat for the governor's agenda under this structure. And so historically lacking a metropolitan organization that's divorced from the governor, I think over the years has been very detrimental to the metropolitan area. And we have a lot of mandates that are metro only, that were driven out of governor's agendas that even by their own party, they couldn't implement statewide, so they did it just in the metropolitan area. Some of these standards cost the taxpayers and residents and businesses of the metro a lot of extra money. And in fact, builders will tell me the same home, absent the land cost, built inside the 7-county metro area versus outside, has about a 20% premium. And they don't even want to talk about the difference between Wisconsin and Minnesota. But so all of these things are going to compile upon on whether or not this, what I believe is the new era where people don't have to live close to work and don't have to commute. It's going to make, I believe, it more challenging for us to compete if we don't address some of these issues.
Thank you. We're going just a little overtime because this is very interesting and helpful. So what we'll do is we have a follow-up question from Senator Pratt, also from Chair Cleaborn. Did anyone else have a question? And then we'll wrap up with Ms. Paddock. So 3 more questions, and then maybe in about 5 minutes or so, if we can keep the question short and the answer short, we can move on. Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Holberg, you had talked a little bit about the Met Council not having a regional focus. And we had an interesting presentation last week, or 2 weeks ago, where the Met Council acts as an operator for like Metro Transit, and then they act as more of a planning organization. And my question is, in the role of planning organization, under the current structure, do you feel like you have the authority to manage your county? Do your municipalities feel like they have the authority to manage their growth or lack of growth and development? Or do they feel like the Met Council has an overrepresentative amount of authority? And the reason I ask that is because one of the tasks we have, going back to the Biskins bill, I think OSMIC had a similar bill back in the day, over 350 pages, is the scope of the Met Council. So I'm wondering if you can maybe give me some insight, some of your thoughts on the authority the Met Council has over local government.
Well, thank you for that. So I sit at a place in a growing suburb. So where the ability to expand how we expand is dictated by the Met Council. I mean, I was around for the Lake Elmo lawsuits. The city of Eagan won't join livable communities. I mean, there's a very healthy tension, and I just can't believe, given that there's only 2 models, us and Portland, but every other major metropolitan area seems to get along pretty good in planning their infrastructure and knowing where roads meet up with each other and some of those things. It feels heavy-handed. It doesn't feel responsive, and I think the bottom line on it is that if you're going to dictate a certain density and a certain number of homes that a community has to take, then you need to be able to step up and provide the infrastructure to support that. And currently, there's a big emphasis on transit and active transportation, which I'm not quite sure totally what all that means, but when you have communities that are growing as rapidly as a community like Lakeville, and when you see the solicitation process for the federal funds and the transit categories are funded at nearly 100% of applicants, and I'm going to offend somebody here, but basically you fund everything in the ham sandwich that applies. And in the road categories, and you can score in the total points, 20% of the total points available and still get money. And then in the road categories, like less than 10% of the and I'm pulling numbers, these aren't, I'd have to get you the hard numbers, but a very small, like maybe 10% of the applications that apply actually get funded. And you have to score in the 90 percentile in total points available to get any funding. There just doesn't seem to be a balance of what the variety of needs are. And so, do I believe they're heavy-handed? Yes, but it's amplified by the resources that then are not provided to support the mandates. I mean, if they're, I have people on tab, I say this all the time. I mean, if you're gonna force us to take all of this new growth, then please at least give us some money for the infrastructure to support it. And kudos to the legislature this year with corridors of commerce. We finally saw some of the corridors of commerce money coming to the growth areas of the metro. That very helpful, will make big differences in those communities. But eventually, when you have total congestion, I believe some think that you're gonna get more people are gonna use transit. What I've seen is when you have total congestion and dysfunction, people just move farther out. They solve the problem their own way, not
Thank
how
you.
we might want them to.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Senator Pratt. So Chair Cleavorn, Ms. Paddock, then we have, I'll allow one last question from Professor Orfield, but we really do need to move on. So quick questions, quick answers, Chair Cleavorn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Holberg, for your testimony. It's been very enlightening, and I really appreciate many of the things that you've said. And to that, as we think about future meetings, I just want to kind of bring up a couple of topics that this conversation has spurred. So really, is worth, one, I don't want the Met Council Governance Committee to be taken over by transit, because it's more than transit. But I do think we have to address the issue that you're talking about. What is the cost of mile traveled, and how is that being dealt with? And what is the best vehicle for doing that from a governance perspective? So maybe getting some statistics, and I don't know that it needs to be a presentation, but definitely information that we can read and discuss. And then the future trends of movement, what are those going to look like going forward, right? And what is the changing age demographic going to do to the need for additional transit, and who will be in those seats on that bus that are currently empty now, right? As we move our older Minnesotans to and from doctors, or to, what's that gonna look like? So not only young working, but elderly working, elderly in need of care. So what does that future of movement look like for us? And then this whole idea about density of housing, what is the cost of housing doing to that movement further and further out as well? And how do we deal with the aging population as we're talking about housing density and housing governance, and what does structure around housing look like? So those are just topics for future
So I
meetings.
think, thank you, Chair Cleavorn. I
Well,
think
and no real response to the question there, but I might add, or will, rather than bus, will they be in an autonomous vehicle?
yeah. So those are good topics. And then maybe, so we'll take Ms. Paddock and Professor Orfield, and then maybe what we'll do is have them make their comments or questions, and then you can roll that into maybe any final comments you have, Commissioner. Ms.
Yeah,
Paddock.
thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioner. First of all, I was just blown away by your comment, I think I got it correctly, that nobody on the Met Council goes to bat for the metro area, but for the governor's agenda. So I just want to note that. But my question is about process. When your group was discussing the recommendation for elected versus appointed and so forth, how did you organize that discussion? Did you, for example, drive towards agreed upon goals, such as how do we get, how is it credible? How do we get a vision that everybody agrees to? How do we get the expertise versus the representation? Or did people just kind of polarize and say, I want elected, I want appointed? How did you drive towards a solution that was agreed upon?
Commissioner?
I don't think we drove to a solution. We looked at, and not terribly deeply, different models. And quite frankly, if you look at the makeup of the members, it was pretty heavily skewed towards current Met Council cheerleaders.
I noticed
if you
that.
might characterize them as that. So kind of ringing my ears is for those of you that served or knew Phyllis Kahn, one of her famous sayings is nothing good ever comes from blue ribbon committees. So
Yes, Commissioner, I think we were both at the committee hearing where she said that, and as I recall, it was something like a Blue Ribbon Commission guarantees nothing will happen.
but we've proven that wrong with this one because there are a number of
And
things
there's a
that
lot
actually
of
already had happened.
Incredible
but-
information in here that will be useful to us, absolutely. So I think this was really a good exercise.
And again, it was only 10 meetings. They were 2 hours apiece. I mean, this is a bigger issue, I think, and really delving into other regions and what makes them successful or not. But I think in the interim, you could make some changes that would mitigate the governor's power and make it more region-centric than governor-centric.
And,
Short of elected, which
and-
I don't support and never have, so.
But Ms. Paddock, I think a number of us really resonated with that comment that Commissioner Holberg made about the governor's influence. The last question belongs to, did you want to say something?
I just want to
Commissioner
say, and as we go forward in this process, as a legislative body, I think we have to be really careful about injecting, and I do know this conversation is a little tongue-in-cheek, but personalities, we want to make sure we don't impugn the motives of other people who are doing good work of the state.
Of course. Professor Orfield.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Holberg, I remember that when we served in the legislature, there was an interceptor that was being sent out to Elko Newmarket. And we were both sort of surprised by that and thought it maybe conflicted with sort of orderly economic development in a certain way. What do you think of the land use that's occurring, in parts of the county, the 2-acre lot land use and the way the Met Council is doing things? Is that a concern, do you think? You said the largest growth is in counties outside the Met Council. Should we be thinking about sewers or things, or should we just let it be the Wild West, do you think?
Commissioner.
Mr. Chair and Professor, I'm not sure that they're allowing 2-acre, in the zoning that I'm familiar with, you have to do 10 acres or you have to cluster, and we've now seen Credit River, which was one of the poster childs of those large lots that were so concerning to some, is now a city, and I think we still have to look at what the market demands. The goals are good, but if they are so constrained and so counter to what the market is demanding, you won't achieve your goals. And I did remind Chair Hornstein, and I don't know if you recall when I attended the 10,000 Friends of Minnesota conference, and you two were quite alarmed that I was there. was a very progressive organization in that day that was pushing new urbanism, and I was at the table sitting between, I don't know if you were even in the legislature yet, but sitting between you and the professor, and you were alarmed that I was there, and they're like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "Well, the 10,000 friends have to have at least one enemy." And I said, the best way to be effective is to know what the other side is up to, so that's why I'm here. So,
That was funny. I do remember that. So, well, thank you very much, Commissioner, and I really, again, appreciate your insights and the well-organized PowerPoint, and I think there is a lot for us to really chew on with this, and
and
we
again,
don't have to
the
reinvent
opinions
a
are
lot.
my own, not of the,
Yeah,
I don't
yes,
want to be in trouble
yes.
with my
They're not
colleagues.
your own opinions. They don't necessarily reflect the Blue Ribbon Panel or the Dakota County Board of Commissioners, but we do appreciate your experience and your insights. And I would just really encourage folks to look at this. I mean, a lot of these are appendices that, we have the legislative auditor's report, et cetera, but again, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of great information here. We appreciate you, and I think I'll just say that you're a great resource for all of us, and I know you'll be monitoring what we do here, and we appreciate your coming in, your time, and your insights, so thank you.
Well, and congratulations on your progress in the last couple of years, and I have high hopes that maybe some more changes in transition can garner enough support to come to fruition. So good luck to all of you.
Thank
You
you.
got a tough job.
Well, thanks a lot. We went a little overtime, but thought this was a good, productive discussion, and appreciate the members that weighed in. So now we have a very important part of our agenda, and the reason we're doing this at the suggestion of Chair Cleavorn, who I had a conversation with earlier in the month, and or maybe it was at the end of August, I don't remember. But she had really suggested that as part of our background process here, that we hear directly from the council in terms of their divisions, what they do, what their roles are, what their responsibilities are. We'll be getting in a little bit more into the actual Met Council budget in 2 weeks, but some of their budgetary issues as well. So we really appreciate the Met Council division heads coming in and helping us navigate these. I had initially thought about this as more of a lightning round, but we thought that a much more in-depth discussion would be appropriate. So we're going to hear from Environmental Services and Community Development today. We're saving transit and the MPO discussion for a later date because that's, again, as we heard from the conversation with Commissioner Holberg, that does take up a lot of concern. But as Chair Cleavorn and others have pointed out, the Met Council is much more than just transit. And we will, hear about some of that today. And of course, Senator Dibble has brought up parks, and parks are under the auspices of community development, so we'll hear about parks today as well. So who would like to go first? Ms. Barajas, or?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony. We'll go here, about 45 minutes or so, maybe 50 minutes. Want to make sure we have enough time for your presentations and questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. My name is Lisa Barajas. I am the Executive Director of the Community Development Division, and I am joined by my colleagues.
I'm Lisa Thompson, the General Manager of Environmental Services.
And I'm Sam Paskey, Assistant General Manager in Environmental Services.
Welcome.
Thank you. So we have some very large categories of information that we'll talk about today. We'll do our best to get through the content. There's a lot of work that we are responsible for within each of our divisions, and I think in just one topic, I could probably speak for days on just one, but so we're just giving you the high-level overview today. But as you know, the council is a regional agency of government for the metro area, created by the legislature in 1967. At that time and in the years since, the legislature has entrusted and directed the council with responsibilities and authorities to plan for the region's orderly and efficient growth and to provide essential services that benefit the metro area. And we'll get into those details in our presentation today. But just a little bit of statistics about the region. As we stand today in our most recent population estimates, the nearly 3.2 million people live in the 7-county region. Nearly 98% of those residents live in the 141 cities within the metro area. And that folks maybe don't recall or know or are familiar with that we do have 430 residents that live at Fort Snelling on organized territory, right by the airport there, as part of the Fort Snelling redevelopment in that area. But Native peoples from 11 federally recognized Minnesota tribes and many other tribal communities, not just from Minnesota, but from across the nation, live within the metro. And we continue to experience growing diversity in the region, representing wide-ranging racial and ethnic populations with about 300 languages spoken at home. So as you are all familiar, we are responsible for both long-range planning, environmental protection, and transportation services. And our structure, very high level, is and falls into these buckets. Today, we're going to talk about the green and the blue, so the columns for community development and environmental services. And I'll jump into community development first, and I'll later turn it to Lisa and Sam to speak about environmental services. In community development, we take our legislative direction out of these main buckets that are, while they have single statutory references, in many cases there are numerous statutes that go along with this, whole sections on the Land Planning Act itself, the Livable Communities Act are more than just a single statute, but sections within Chapter 473. So I'll jump into those. And starting with our planning responsibilities. The Metropolitan Land Planning Act is central to our long-range planning at the council. In addition to creating a regional plan to guide the growth and development of the region, the legislature established a relationship between regional and local plans through this planning act that was passed in 1976. And that purpose is here on the slide, but really specifically to accomplish comprehensive local planning with land use controls that are consistent with planned, orderly, and staged development, and the metropolitan system plans, which include transportation, environmental services, and our regional parks and open space system. The second purpose of the Land Planning Act was to provide assistance to local governmental units within the metro for the preparation of plans and official controls appropriate for their areas and consistent with the metropolitan system plans. So we conduct regional planning on a 10-year cycle. I'm not sure why that slide isn't advancing. I apologize. It's advanced here, but not there. For the sake of time, I'll keep talking and hopefully we can technically get it moving again. Our regional planning cycle is a 10-year cycle as prescribed in the law. They're slow to respond, just scared of you, I think. We are currently on the right-hand side of this slide, having received results from the decennial census in 2021, and we are in the process of developing the 2050 Regional Development Guide and the related system and policy plans as we speak. By 2025, we must issue system statements, which are individualized notices for every individual local unit of government within the metro area, so for every city, township, and county in the metro. And these system statements by law must describe the forecasted growth for that particular unit, as well as the regional capital plans for regional systems for each of those jurisdictions as it affects those jurisdictions. The issuance of system statements initiates the local planning process, and local plans then are due to the council for review and authorization in the year ending in 8 for each decade, as is written in the law. The legislature also established a Land Use Advisory Committee to advise the council on issues of long-range and comprehensive planning, as well as to be the body to hear system statement disputes. As directed in the law, this committee is comprised of 16 members, half of which must be locally elected officials, and it is chaired by one of our council members. Moving on to regional parks, the Metropolitan Parks Act of 1974 designated regional parks and open space as one of the regional systems that the council must plan for. The Parks Act directs the council to plan for the recreation and open space needs of the region and prescribes the council's roles, which are on this slide here. These roles, the legislature also established the Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Commission to advise the council on a variety of parks-related issues, including updating and revising the regional parks policy plan every 4 years, and that designates land as part of the regional park system. Reviewing and recommending parks and trail long-range plans for Metropolitan Council approval, and then developing the policies for the Regional Parks Capital Improvement Program and authorizing grants financed with state appropriations and Metropolitan Council funds. The council, however, does not do this alone. We work in partnership with the 10 regional parks implementing agencies. The map on this slide here shows you the jurisdictions of those 10 agencies, as well as the current open components of the regional park system, which includes regional trail network as well. These 10 implementing agencies are also defined in law as to their role as regional parks implementing agencies and the relationship that they are to have with the council regarding regional park system. And you may or may not have known it, but you may have already visited a regional system. We have 56 regional parks and park reserves open to the public today. Many of these are large in nature, like Lebanon Hills, and have small areas of development, but 80% of that land remains in natural landscape and habitat for its open space and natural features. We also have 8 special recreation features. Probably best known is the Como Zoo as a component of that. And then we have over 415 miles of regional trails that crisscross the region. The system comprises more than 54,000 acres of land across the region. And in this last year of counts in 2022, we had 69 million visits to the system, which is an increasingly large. In my 15 years at the council, that number has grown by the millions year over year. And since 2021, I think we had a 4 or 5 million visitation increase, largely due to the effects that we've been seeing post-COVID. During COVID, a lot of folks are really using the regional park system as a place to safely gather, get outdoors, and have some mental health washing, if you will, as part of the system. And certainly working together with our parks implementing agency partners, we've been thinking more about how we keep people coming back and how we continue to make the system something that continues to meet the needs of the region's residents. We also, in community development, are responsible for implementing the Livable Communities Act. This was passed in 1995 as a voluntary program, incentive-based approach to help communities grow and redevelop, meet local and regional goals, and to address the region's affordable and life cycle housing needs. The council awards grants to cities, counties, and their development authorities through this program, and has established a Livable Communities Advisory Committee made up of folks with certain areas of development expertise, whether it's architecture, site design, landscape, or environmental review, a variety of community engagement, a variety of different things that influence development and community goals to help review and make recommendations to the council on grants awards for this program. The purposes here are really laid out in the act itself on how the council is to direct the programs of this, to really focus on interrelating development and redevelopment, as well as transit, interrelating affordable housing and employment growth areas, really making those connections between where people live and where they work, intensifying land uses that lead to more compact development or redevelopment, achieving a mix of housing opportunities, and really encouraging public infrastructure investments that help support all of that within the development programs. As you can see, the photo on the right here is probably one of the most exemplary of more recent projects in the city of Hopkins. Their artery work that's just to the north of the planned station area on the southwest line. But the city really used this program as an opportunity to rethink their streetscape, rethink bringing additional folks to their downtown, which is the heart and soul of that community, and how they can connect folks who are traveling by transit, but also create places for people to live within the community that are enjoyable, easy to connect from the transit station to downtown and support their local businesses, as well as have some really great outdoor spaces for community events and activities. I highly encourage you, if you haven't been to Hopkins in the summer months for their Raspberry Festival, to check it out. It's a great amount of fun, and they have all sorts of activities regularly on that corridor. This program is directed in law into three main programs, and the council has created a sub-account within the Livable Communities Demonstration Account. But these programs are funded by statutorily defined sources, plus any relinquishments and interest earnings that are from this particular program. The council passes through 100% of these funds. We don't keep any of this particular levy for administrative purposes, and we currently have 76 participating communities in this program. The current portfolio is about 110 grants, open active grants, valued at about $175 million. It does take time for development to happen, and we start early with our program like the tax-based revitalization account, which is about contamination, brownfield cleanup. So we'll see often projects like the one you saw previously on the previous slide come in early for cleanup and investigation and site review, and then move through different programs as their development phases continue. I am remiss in only having 2 slides about the Housing Authority. This is one area where we spend a significant amount of time. About half of my staff in my division work in the Housing Authority. But the Council's Housing and Redevelopment Authority was established in 1974 by the legislature. And our specific roles are defined in the statute. It's a very long paragraph that probably could use some subdivisions within it, but a very long paragraph of the council's roles as it pertains to Housing Authority. But we're responsible for administering the federal and state funded programs, primarily federally funded programs. We're the largest rental assistance program, or the largest assistance program that we operate is the Federal Housing Choice Voucher, or what people regularly refer to as Section 8. And under this program, we assist about 7,200 families with rental assistance. This is the largest rent assistance program. We are the largest rent assistance operator in the state of Minnesota. And in addition to this program, the HRA also administers 600 units of rental assistance in various special programs that are primarily also federally funded and some that are state funded as well. The Metro HRA is only one of several housing authorities in the region. Our jurisdiction is defined in law as those areas that are not otherwise covered by a housing authority at the time the law was passed. Our service area is that light yellow, so covering Anoka, Carver, and then suburban Hennepin and Ramsey counties. We work really closely with each of these housing authorities across the region, however, recognizing that residents aren't just living within your service area or moving within your service area, although we do have a very large service area. We do have a lot of intercity movement with our residents, but recognizing that folks move across the entire region for a variety of reasons, and that partnership amongst our agencies is meant to facilitate that movement for residents of the region. Our service area is 96 communities, and we serve a population of more than 1 million residents. And then finally, I'll wrap up our CD portion of this presentation today. We also house a very large research department. It's the foundation of all of our long-range planning work. It's the foundation for a lot of the decisions we're making around our housing authority as how we set rents, because we investigate regional rent trends. We investigate it at different levels. We understand the forecasts of population, households, and jobs, which we're directed to do by law. We're directed to do population estimates on an annual basis as well. And a lot of the work that we do in long-range planning is really underpinned by the research that's done here. I also want to add on that we do a lot of technical assistance for local units of government, totally recognizing that many of our local unit government partners have small staffs. They don't have the ability to have a research department, and so really rely upon the data and resources and tools that we can provide to help them make local planning decisions. One of the examples on the screen here is our Growing Shade project. This is the city of Coon Rapids, but really investigating urban tree canopy in relationship to things like extreme heat and urban heat island, because we were hearing from our local government partners how important it was to them to understand what that landscape looked like, how they compare to other communities, and making those connections across communities for how we might approach this issue. So we can do the math, we can do the research, and we can deliver the tools that put that data in an accessible format in people's fingertips without having to have any sort of special programs or special data understanding to manipulate the numbers in order to figure out what it means. Our teams do a lot of that work in response to what we're hearing from our local government partners every day as they work to implement their local plans. So I will turn it over to Lisa.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to share the story of environmental services with you today. We have a long, successful record of cleaning a lot of water every day of every year. In fact, it's enough water in a single day to fill the Empire State Building. The residents and business of this region, who make up almost half of the state's population, discharge an average of 250 million gallons per day that we clean up before we return it to the environment. So this is who we are when you look at the map. It takes a lot of infrastructure to be able to clean that much water. We have 9 treatment facilities and hundreds of miles of pipes that convey the wastewater, and they have a replacement value of over $7 billion, and we need to program about $150 million a year just to keep that up and running in the manner that it needs to stand to serve this region. We're nationally recognized for our performance in meeting EPA and MPCA operating requirements, but also of note is for preventing untreated wastewater overflows by eliminating combined storm and sanitary sewers and addressing inflow and infiltration. That's helped our system be more efficient than many across the country. And in fact, our cost comparable to utilities similar in size is about 40% less than others across the country. And I would attribute that it's important to mention that the 111 communities that play an important role in that system have a lot to do with that effectiveness and efficiency. And as we advance slides, I'll let you know one of my slides got out of order, so you're going to have to hop ahead. I think about 4 slides will get you to this one, and then you'll have to hop back. This slide actually is the picture that depicts end-to-end when people flush or businesses discharge and it gets to our plant to be treated. And you can see that those 111 communities provide a service in this regional system to the residents of the region. They have large investments in infrastructure as well because they have to collect the wastewater and convey it to our pipes. And it's because of the relationship between our parts that the residents only receive one bill for their total cost of conveying and treating their wastewater. That's a model that reflects government working together and serving the region better together. I think it's important to say a few words about our origin. This aerial photo of the Mississippi River near Lake Street between Minneapolis and St. Paul is from a time in the early 1930s when sewage mats could be seen and smelled. There wasn't a treatment system, and wastewater drained directly into the river where it would sink to the bottom and decompose and rob that river of the oxygen needed for aquatic life, and it would produce methane gas. The river was effectively dead. It had not enough dissolved oxygen to support life, and this was demonstrated by a fish survey that took place between Minneapolis and Red Wing, and they found only 3 fish. Gratefully, things are quite different today. Something had to be done at that time, and what happened is, I think, under the roots of what we are today, Minneapolis and St. Paul formed the first regional wastewater system, and they called it the Minneapolis-St. Paul Sanitary District. And together, they built the Metro plant, which started operating in 1938. As the regional system grew, the sanitation district first became the Waste Control Commission, and then Environmental Services Division of the Met Council. Today, after nearly 100 years of water quality work done not only by the Met Council, but by many others in this region, we are a standout model of collaboration, and the Mississippi River, while not perfect, has returned to becoming a much more vibrant ecosystem supporting fishing, recreation, and commerce. One thing that we can boast that others cannot is that 72 miles of this river is actually included in the only national park on the Mississippi. The National Park Service owns only 67 acres of the land within the 54,000 acre park. The rest is composed of city parks, regional parks, a state park, a national wildlife refuge, state scientific and natural areas, along with private businesses and homes. This is a model that inspires us in environmental services to do our work and accomplish these kinds of things with others. There are 3 key statutory measures that are embodied in our mission, which is to partner, plan, and provide services to protect the region's water. First is the Clean Water Act in 1972 that designated us as the area-wide waste treatment agency to implement wastewater treatment and address non-point source pollution to protect water quality. The second is the Metro Surface Water Management Act in 1982, which also addressed water pollution issues and provided guidance that we should review locally driven plans and final approval would come from the Board of Water and Soil Resources. And then in 1999, the Metro Land Planning Act required the council to prepare a Metropolitan Development Guide, which we today refer to as Thrive Planning Guide, along with associated policy and system plans, which includes the system plan for the wastewater system. And then in the 1990s, as a severe drought started to affect the river quite significantly, and people recognizing that that is a source of a lot of water supply, the intensity of our charge to do water supply planning was raised. So adequate supplies for water is essential for our region's growth, livability, and prosperity. And as the population has grown and expanded and development is happening, it's increasing demands on our water supplies in the region. So the statute that enables us to do our work is to call for us to do coordinated planning by local communities, the Met Council, and the state partners to meet our future water supply needs. We have a role in water supply planning to work with our regional partners to develop and update a regional water supply plan. We also provide valuable services to support local government units making informed and effective water supply decisions. And we provide assistance to communities in developing and implementing their local water supply plans, as well as helping the region at large understand the approaching and emerging issues. And of course, the underpinnings for all that is to build a strong collaborative and transparent relationship with those stakeholders. This is just a glimpse of the many complex challenges that we face today as we consider water supply. And no one entity alone will be able to address those challenges. So how we plan for and achieve clean water for future generations is really key to achieving that vision. That's why ES has updated our mission to provide a brighter North Star to inform and remind our staff of water professionals that we need to partner in our work every day to ensure clean water for future generations. Our mission to partner, plan, and provide services to protect the region's water now leads with the word partner. So we begin with the end in mind. And since water has no borders, we know that we need to play an important role centered around engagement with other water stakeholders who could partner in the solutions for the best possible shared future for this Twin Cities region. And our governance supports what is best for all of us by working in partnership with local governments, counties, watershed districts, state agencies, and others, so that we can maximize use of our existing infrastructure, which is built generations before we see its ultimate capacity used. Protect what we have by using less, and address contamination and protect and restore water quality while managing the uncertainty and risk. Our list of partner groups has grown immeasurably in the recent years because of the need for greater and greater collaboration to develop strategies for these complex issues. We have a water advisory group that's helping shape the regional policy that we're working on today. It has local representatives from the wastewater, water resources, and drinking water suppliers. We have the Metropolitan Area Water Supply Advisory Committee, which is helping us create a regional water supply plan. There we have representatives that include local government, water suppliers, and state agencies. We've recently created a technical advisory group for that policy setting group, and they dig into the issues and solutions. And they have representatives that include water experts from state, local government again, academia, and private sector. We have 8 sub-regional planning coordination groups that are focused on their local water supply issues. And that includes government and state agency reps so that together we can develop the best solutions going forward. And we're also just now starting to convene a work group to plan for a sustainable water supply in the north and east part of the metro, the White Bear Lake area. We also work a lot with metro cities to help provide a voice and guidance in shaping our policy, but in particular, we often have a task force developed for an immediate issue where we want to get a lot of perspective and develop a solution going forward, and we will look to the metro cities to help us field participants for that. I'll close with a glimpse of the past juxtaposed with the future. The oldest 8 plants in our system were built from 1938 to 1984. I'm one of the few people that have been in the Council in Environmental Services since 1984. This is a big time for us because we went a long stretch without a new plant being built until 2015. The East Bethel plant is a new paradigm, shifting to wastewater treatment that's designed to recover water resources for current and future use and benefit. That requires us to treat the water to much higher standards so that the cleaned water can be discharged to a land application basin and has the potential for future irrigation use. All those older plants discharge to the Minnesota, the Mississippi, or the St. Croix River. We're excited because we have 3 new plants in our future. And the design of those plants will take advantage not only of the latest technology, but how can we contribute to meeting the water quality and supply needs of this region while achieving greater energy and climate change resiliency. We're excited about the potential of these new facilities to bring added value, and we will continue to improve how ES can deliver on our mission to partner, plan, and provide services to protect the region's water. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
both of
Mr.
you,
Chair.
for your presentations, very helpful. We'll take maybe about 15 minutes or so for Q&A and discussion. And I also appreciated your mention of water supply. It's an issue that Ms. Beckman had raised, and I think it's one we want to delve into a little bit more as we move forward. So first we have Representative Koznick and then Commissioner Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation. Ms. Barajas, if I said.
Barajas, yep.
Thank you. I had some questions about housing. That's some of the biggest areas of contention, I think, when we talk to our cities, our counties, or our townships. Do you think that the Livable Communities programs have been successful? Or how can we improve them? Because, I was looking, like the Federal Reserve has done some studies. It's pretty well known. We have some of the largest disparities in housing. We have some of the largest concentrations of poverty in the Twin Cities area. And from where I can see, I don't think that we've achieved those goals at all. In fact, the Federal Reserve says we need about 18,000 new housing units to keep up. A certain amount of those, another goal that they have is about a little over 2,000 of them to be affordable. And then also for the Twin Cities to have the Twin Cities region match the national homeownership rate, which in our area is embarrassing. So what is the Met Council doing to help increase the supply of housing instead of make it more difficult?
Ms. Barajas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Committee Member Koznick. That is an excellent question. Housing is a required element of local comprehensive plans. It's something that we work with local units of government for decades on helping to support the planning to facilitate development of housing and affordable housing. Obviously, managing our growth is important in this region, and having the land available to support the development of housing to keep up with our population growth is important. After the housing market crash in the late 2000s, we had a very slow recovery. This is an issue that the council regularly reviews, digs into, as we're directed by the legislature. We're directed to report on housing production in the region. We're directed to report on the progress that local units of governments are making against their housing goals. And all of the time I've been at the council, time and time again, we regularly hear that the biggest issue that we have in developing affordable housing is the lack of funding to support that. It's not that, yeah, there are some tweaks we can make around the edges. There are things we can do to support facilitating zoning, things we can do to make it easier for housing to happen. But affordable housing costs money, it turns out. It costs money to support that development. It costs money to subsidize that. And we hope that the new sales tax that the legislature has passed to support local housing, affordable housing aid will help make a big dent in that, that we'll see in the coming years and be monitoring that. But I know at the council and at various housing committees at the legislature, we have regularly noted how catching up on production, which the region has done and started to do over the last couple of years, after a slow recovery after the housing market crash, is the big picture that we need to do to help broaden the housing supply. But that the biggest or the largest need that we find in the region is at the affordable level, which has essentially flatlined in production over the last decade at around 1,500, 1,700 units a year of housing units that would be affordable to households making 50% AMI or less, or 60% AMI or less. I apologize.
Mr. Koznick.
No, thank you. I appreciate the response, and I think sometimes what I'm hearing is a lot of the extra regulations and stuff is what's driving up the cost of housing and making it more affordable. So I think needs to be more work to be done on that. But speaking more to the task force and the governance is what we're kind of looking to do with the housing perspective. We had, in Senator Dibble's committee, heard a bill about restructuring the Met Council. We're hearing about other areas of the Met Council. Senator Port has the Housing Committee in the Senate. And so I'm wondering if when we actually meet as a legislature and work on some of the ideas that we may put forward, that some kind of reform bill, will it go to just transportation, will it go to housing, state government, I'm hearing state government finance has an interest. And so a bill like that should, I hope we should recommend that it does get a thorough vetting in a variety of the issues, and then we can decide if the Met Council is the best place to address some of these issues as well.
Yeah, thank you, Representative. I'll certainly comment on that. Obviously, state government is a stop and should be a stop in both bodies, transportation, but potentially housing and environment. Because what we're hearing today is housing and environment related. So we have a lot of legislators that have a stake in the Met Council, so thanks for that reminder of that. We'll hear from Commissioner Bigham, Professor Orfield, Senator Pratt, and then I have not a question but a request here to wrap us up. So Commissioner Bigham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that, and I'm going to say this because I've said it at every one of these meetings, a shout out to Senator Port for listening to her good old buddy that's now on the county board. But the county's really pressed hard to get more direct local funding for housing, for the reason about affordability. We have a lot of zoning authority with our city partners. Some cities got housing money as well, and more than others, and it really has been helpful. We're going through all that now. We're still waiting on guidance from the Housing and Finance Agency, but in my, my opinion, and again, we have a little kitchen cabinet that are helping me from the suburban counties. We should be doing the vouchers, and the council does have, some of the vouchers they're distributing. It just makes it way more efficient. We're able to do it now. You can tell by the PowerPoint, there are some suburban counties that use the council to do their HRA. There's some suburban HRAs that are utilized. So there would have to be some work done on the county level too to staff up on that, but certainly the funding is there now, thanks to the legislature for doing that. A lot of these things are because we didn't have funding to do it. And I'm going to keep saying this, the legislature and the governor gave a lot of authority to local governments this last year for a reason. And I think it circumvented the council so that we had direct access. I think the Met Council, and I believe my counterparts would agree with me, do a fantastic job on regional parks and open spaces. When we do receive a bonding bill, which isn't all the time, maybe isn't every 2 years, hope it is, maybe it's going to be every year, that's our major funding mechanism for our regional parks. And we got a big boost this year, thanks to the legislature, and we're able to clear off some of our backlog of projects. Post-pandemic, the parks have been so popular. We have goats in our park. I mean, I'm really proud of that, to help with invasive species in there. Dakota County has bison in theirs. I mean, really, we've just really taken advantage of a lot of different things. The council does a great job with that. And wastewater, they do a great job with. I think, and I'm going to wrap it up here, there are huge concerns and a lot of insecurity about the water supply concern. It feels like everybody's saying, ooh, I really hope somebody's watching out for this. It feels like it's like everybody's trying to catch the ball up in the air and hoping somebody's going to come down with it, because I'm a big football fan. And it's very concerning. And I don't think it's reassured isn't the right adjective, but I mean, East Metro has been growing now. We have Woodbury, Lakeville isn't really East Metro. It's like Southeast Metro. I mean, but you have two of the largest metropolitan suburban cities. And we should have been on the map a long time ago having these water issues. We have White Bear Lake, we have Lake Elmo, we have Woodbury, we have Cottage Grove, we have PFAS that has been an issue. So for now to be starting that's very concerning. And West Metro has been growing for years. Now we're the game in town. We're the new kid in town with all the development. And it's very concerning. And so I think that's where the land use and water supply planning get me very nervous. I'm going to keep saying that. And so I think that's an area we need to really focus in on, because we don't want to get caught 15, 20 years down the road with an issue of okay, I guess we're going to surface water on these two rivers we're blessed with, or whatever. I mean, no offense to St. Paul, that they use as surface water. But we don't want to do it. We treat our water now. We just broke ground in Cottage Grove on the first permanent treatment plant paid for by the 3M settlement because of the PFAS issue. So anyway, that's a big issue. And I just think the housing stuff should come to the county and probably the big cities. And I think the regional parks and open space and wastewater stuff, you guys do a tremendous job on.
Thank you. If you want a quick comment, but we have a few others that wanted to ask questions. Okay. Thank you. We'll add Ms. Paddock to the list, and then we'll move on after hers. So we have Professor Orfield, Senator Pratt, Ms. Beckman, Ms. Paddock, and then we'll have to move on after Ms. Paddock's question. So, Professor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to direct this to the community development staff. What is the Met Council's duty under the Federal Fair Housing Act to affirmatively further fair housing? And the second part of that question is, we're turning down very cost-effective proposals in Dakota County. They're building units for $400,000 and have $600 rents. And we're awarding money to projects in the central cities in very segregated neighborhoods that cost $600,000 or $700,000, and they have $1,200 rents. So how is it consistent? You know, what's the duty under the Federal Fair Housing Act? And why are we turning down these cost-effective suburbs that are building the units for less cost and less rents?
Mr. Chair, committee members, our responsibilities on the Fair Housing Act pertain to where we receive federal dollars, and we follow those. We've defined those and explained those within our housing policy plan, which I'm happy to share with you all after this. I don't want to misspeak on that answer and be sure we get that right for you. Further, as we spoke earlier about the lack of funding, the Livable Communities programs are only funded by the levy that we have, and specifically the legislature has only allocated $1.5 million annually to the Local Housing Incentives Account program, which is the program that we have voluntary for affordable housing in the region. We can solicit annual requests for proposals in conjunction with Minnesota Housing, and do that, and have been doing that, I think, since the inception of the of the Livable Communities Act. We have found consistently on an annual basis that we have far more requests than we have funding available. I think I've shared with legislators in the past years that the volume is sometimes 4, 5, 10 times more requests for funding than what we have available. So the selection process is used very transparent scoring criteria on an annual basis. Minnesota Housing has their their qualified allocation plan, and the Metropolitan Council uses their annual fund distribution plan and a scoring rubric. I can't speak to a very specific one that you're speaking of, but there is a variety of reasons for funding recommendations on various projects from year to year, from cycle to cycle. And it's highly competitive. I'll have to tell you, it is a highly competitive process. Like I said, more projects request funds than we have available funding to distribute. So through our Livable Communities Advisory Committee is how our recommendations are made. That's a series of meetings where those advisory committee members are reviewing applications, meeting with the applicants, walking through those processes, and trying to weigh every application against the goals, the statutory goals of the program, as well as the scoring rubrics that are available.
Thank you. I'm sure this is an issue we'll be revisiting as well. Senator Pratt and then Ms. Beckman after that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, there's so much to do, and just an interesting stat from the Senate bonding tour when we visited the Metro wastewater treatment. 70% of our water is coming from groundwater, and yet we're disposing of it as surface water at the end of the treatment process, and something I think we should be looking at as we look at that heat map, which I agree with Commissioner Bingham is extremely alarming. But my question is one for you, Ms. Barjas, and then one for Ms. Thompson. Ms. Barjas, you mentioned this body of locally elected officials chaired by a member of the Met Council. I was taking notes. I didn't catch up on all of that. I was wondering if you could dive into that again. And then for Ms. Thompson, in one of our first meetings, we talked about the application of SAC and WAC fees as it comes to development. Is that your area that's implementing those, or which area is making determination on SAC and WAC fees? Mr. Chair, I just thought of a third one following up on Senator Koznick's question. Or Representative. Sorry
There's the
about that.
ongoing question of whether that's a promotion or demotion. We'll proceed.
You mentioned the research department, and as Representative Koznick mentioned, we are one of the highest cost metropolitan areas for housing. What has the research department found in that? Or can you at least, if you can't answer it now, at least provide that information back to the committee? So the Citizens Council with the member, or the locally elected officials member, SAC and WAC fees, and then the research question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee member. The body I was referring to is the Land Use Advisory Committee that's established by the legislature to advise the council on issues of comprehensive planning and long-range planning. They're also by law one of the bodies that local governments may choose to have their disputes with a system statement to be heard within. They can choose to be heard at the Land Use Advisory Committee or in front of an administrative law judge. It goes different every 10 years. Local governments choose one or the other. There's not that many. That body, by law, is required to be 16 members, one representative from each of the council districts that we have. And half of those members must be locally elected officials. At least half is what the law says. We are currently recruiting for members, so please, if you do know folks we're in that cycle now, since we've had redistricting, we're always looking for members and have open applications, so would welcome additional applicants. On the research, on housing construction, especially over the last couple of years, what we have found is that the cost of materials alone is the largest component driving housing construction. And that had gone up significantly during COVID with global supply shortages and with labor issues and costs. That is not the council's research, that's national research. And I'm happy to share that. If I will dig into it, I'm happy to find that for you and share that. But that has been the largest cost increase, not just in one metro area, but across the nation alone. Certainly, different local units of government will have different costs as it relates to their local fees and requirements, but the core of the cost and increasing cost is construction costs. We see that in the projects that we have awarded previous grants through Livable Communities and with our partners at Minnesota Housing, the number of projects that have come back requesting additional funds because of that increase in materials over the last couple of years. It's more likely than not for projects, especially that were submitted and awarded in 2019 and then moving into 2020 and 21, just the frequency of that change of cost, and it's only gone up, never down in any of those cases.
Mr. Chair,
Senator Pratt.
before we get to Ms. Thompson, I agree with you. The cost, the cost of materials has gone up. That's affected every metropolitan area. I'm more interested in comparisons between our metropolitan area and other metropolitan areas.
I can follow up with you, Mr. Chair, on those comparisons.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, that's right. Let's have the WAC question.
So let me start with the effluent where we discharge, that most of this region is drawing water from the aquifers. And so it's important that we make sure those aquifers, if we're always making withdrawals and not getting enough deposits, they're not going to serve us in the future. So there's a range of how much aquifer recharge can be impacted. So even though we're putting in the river, it does have some impact on aquifer recharge. But you can go up the continuum and you can have greater impact. So the East Bethel plant, our newest plant that we built, is higher in that continuum because it isn't discharging to a river. But it's not as far as you can go, although in this state you can't do it. But across the country, there are other places that are taking that water to a drinking water standard and actually injecting it back into the aquifer to replenish it. So these are things to be considered as we go forward and really get a handle on what do we need to ensure that we'll have clean water and have that security as we go forward. It's paradigm shifting time for us. When they built those early plants, running out of water was very far from their concerns. And a lot of the communities weren't developed to where we could say that all the new development is not by the river, so they're relying on putting wells into the aquifers. So, our history was decided at the time with the best that we knew at the time Now we know that the cause and effect, while the effect is much later, we can appreciate the causes and we can find solutions and design things going forward with that knowledge. The SAC and WAC is partially ours and partially the community's. So we have built infrastructure that we don't maximize the use, the capacity of from day one. We build it to serve the future. But it wouldn't be right to make all current users pay for future benefits. So the SAC and WAC is intended, SAC is ours, WAC is the community's. And it's intended to, okay, you're going to hook up to our system, you're going to take a little of that reserve capacity, so it's your turn to help pay for what we built so you could do that. So we've got a system to spread that cost and make sure that the true cost of having that ability to grow is shared by those that benefit from it. And we've had probably more SAC task forces with the communities because we've run into some changes with, okay, now outdoor patios. What's the right approach to that? And I think we've modified from the original plan to reduce and look at that connection differently than we would a normal restaurant inside seating. So there's always opportunities to look at what the pattern's been, what have we learned from how we were doing it, and how could we change it or have it be more effective. We don't want to discourage development. We don't want to make it hard for the little businesses to be able to do what they need to do. I think if you look at our SAC fees, they've been flat for a very, very, very long time. But that's not true when you look across the country at other regions. And so I think the good news is that we've been able to keep them from growing, and we've been able to say, yes, you can put that business there. We have capacity to serve you. I always say, well, we're not going to fill all the seats all the time. But do you want us to, on average, be able to take all your flushes? Or do you want us to always be able to take all your flushes? Then we have to consider the maximal use that you might have of your system. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to always serve them.
Thank you. Okay, so we have Ms. Beckman and Ms. Paddock, and then we'll move on to our next agenda item after that. Ms. Beckman.
Thank you, Chair. I am thinking about all of these presentations in the frame of, so that information, how does it inform this conversation about governance structure? And so if we look at the water and the environmental services, which everyone sort of recognizes is one of the biggest successful points of the Metropolitan Council, and thinking about the success, you, Ms. Thompson, you over and over said partner with local governments. And I'm curious if you have similar to the Land Use Advisory Committee, where you have a body, can you just speak more to the governance? How do you work with local governments, and how do you come up with the water plans? Because it sounds like the council helps coordinate local plans, you provide info and technical assistance to local government, and you convene partners. But how do you make some of these hard decisions about water in partnership with local governments?
So I think that's an answer we need to jointly respond to, because we have a system plan which basically tells those communities how much capacity they have available for their growth and development. But it's a key part, and we've heard it from a couple folks. The land use, are we overpopulating and not going to have enough water? Are we overpopulating and won't have the capacity to take all the flushes or the needs of the business? So that's a very coordinated work and collaboration that we need and do internal to the council as we approach the development of the regional development framework. So.
Our teams work incredibly closely together. We can't do land use without wastewater. We can't do land use without water. I think even just yesterday, we had our planning teams together across the council. I think we have roughly 60 staff from all divisions of the council working on our regional plan. And we meet on a pretty, oh my goodness, weekly basis. I'm working on this work in addition to deep dives into different areas, including working together on sub-regional groups, aligning land use with our infrastructure investments. We work together on 3M PFAS settlement. We work together on a number of issues across the region and aligning those efforts. We do use our land use advisory committee and bring all of these issues forward because especially our local elected officials see that connection too. They're like, yeah, but what about this? So that's a major role. While we talk about it as long-range planning and comprehensive planning, that work isn't just land use. It is all of the infrastructure that's needed to support that as well, because we can't do that without that collaboration. So our land use advisory committee, even actually just our last meeting, we started with water findings in our current planning cycle and worked through some transportation updates and then talked about land use objectives with that committee. That's a pretty typical committee agenda for them.
So I'd add that water is a uniting subject, right? We don't have to argue about whether we care about it, whether it's important. Everybody's already there. So when we can bring good information and start the conversations, people are ready to help and figure out what to do. So it's also brought a lot more connection for us with even the state agencies. So Source Water Protection, Department of Health, we are more and more in the last decade working with all of those state agencies on water issues in a much higher level of interaction than we had in the past. So we've moved beyond just the basic of here's some wastewater that needs to be treated and meet the environmental standards to this is our water. How do we take care of it so it can serve us today and in the future as well? And that can't be done by one entity. And we all have to trust and know that together we can do something better. And that's takes good information. I have a lot of scientists in environmental services, and they will tell you that the mantra we've had in the last 10 years is you can have all the data and understand all the problems, but if you can't talk about and collaborate with people, it's going to be stuck in your heads. And so we've really emphasized the ability for us to reach across to other organizations and stakeholders that need to be part of looking at these wicked problems and coming up with multi-solutions that take care of more than one person or one unit's issue.
Can I
Thank
do a
you.
quick
Yes, one
follow-up?
follow-up.
And I appreciate that. I think one of the reasons I have brought up water at each one is that I would like for us to be thinking about the recommendation of the governance structure for the future of the region, not the needs right now. And while I love hearing that everybody shares the importance of water and is focused on it, at some point it is going to be a scarce resource. And when there's scarcity, and I feel like this is where we were in the transit space, there was scarcity around funding and so there was, that causes tension. When water is scarce, because we're going to get there, I think, what's the governance structure that's going to help us navigate that time? You look at the governance structure around the Colorado River and what has to be done to manage that. So that's the frame that I am thinking about. The recommendation for the future of the Met Council governance is, do you need some elected officials embedded in there because a scarce resource makes it more dramatic? Or do you actually already have elected officials embedded in there? Because the conversation it seems like you're having around land use and plans and water, that it's already in the structure and so you can continue appointed. So more just thinking out loud, but I'm curious your thoughts of, does the governance structure you have right now support decision-making if water was scarce?
Does anyone want to take that one?
Well, we do have representatives on our work, so I would say electeds have voices. MAWSAC, Metropolitan Area Water Supply Advisory Committee, is made up of folks in that range, plus the state agency representatives. So as much as possible, we're trying to make sure our collaborations include all those voices to build the support for the decision levels. And I think to the point of water scarcity, if we do the right things now, Minnesota is rich with water. So if we start thinking about the way out future, we should be able to figure out the right approach to make sure that we won't run out of water.
Okay, great. The last member question belongs to Ms. Paddock.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been listening here about the myriad things that you do. It's kind of dizzying. And I'm thinking if we were building a house, we're listening to the electrician and the carpenter and the plumber. And I'm wondering where the architect is. So is there a vision that pulls all this together, that somehow matches all the things that we're talking about, the availability of water, what's the capacity of the area? What can the area tolerate? How do we balance density with our environment? Who construes this vision? And how? What's the process? And how does it happen, or does it happen, that it's reflected back to the people in a way that the people can buy into it? I experience the Met Council on the local level, and I've been directly involved in the transit, the planning, and the parks areas. And there's controversy all over the place, which tells me there isn't buy-in, and I don't know anybody in my community who knows what the big vision is of the metropolitan area. Is there one, or is it the plumber and the electrician and the whoever, all just going off in their own directions?
Mr.
Ms.
Chair.
Barajas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the question. It's very timely. As I mentioned at the beginning of my section of our presentation, we are in the process of updating our long-range plan. That is the vision for the region. It's not the council's vision, but it's the region's plan for this work. We do long-range planning in collaboration with all of the partners that we've talked about today, and the transportation elements through TAB, our water elements through MOSAC and through our land use advisory committees, but also through the various work groups that our different divisions are responsible for. We also have a regional planning advisory group that has 40-some representatives from 40 different communities across the region that are advising on long-range planning work. We do that in partnership with Metro Cities and really appreciate that partnership. But we build all of that starting point based on what local units of governments have adopted in their comprehensive plans. And we've analyzed those plans and pulled them out, and they tell us what's important to them through what they've said their visions are. We've shared that information with our council members of these are the themes that we see across all these visions, across all of these local comprehensive plans, and from our partnerships with local governments and what they tell us. Our staff talk to each other every day. There isn't a single day that goes by that we're not talking to someone at a local unit of government. On my team, we have what we call sector representatives. Those are our first point of contact for local staff, connecting with staff in Lisa's departments or in Sam's departments and our transportation department. But those are the folks who are kind of have that pulse and come back and share with others and make those connections and build that technical assistance and support. But those local units of government, those staff are telling us every day what isn't working, what is working, what they're encountering problems with. And those are the issues that we're rolling up, in addition to the significant amount of public engagement that we are doing with residents across the region to hear what's important to them too. How do they experience the region? What would they like to see in this region that they aren't seeing today? And really engaging with those voices that we don't hear as part of the planning process. They're often underrepresented, that often don't have the time in their everyday workday to come to a meeting where they sit at a dais and talk at a microphone, but we're meeting them where they are, meeting them as part of their trips, as part of their everyday, and asking them what they would like to see in this region, and using that information to really inform then how do we make this region good for everybody. So that's a process I really encourage you all to participate in as members of the residents of this region as well. But that's the process that we use to organize how we go about doing our work. Our current plan through 2040 is Thrive MSP 2040. that's the plan that includes our capital programs, our plans for growth, our plans for how we're going to deliver transportation and wastewater and water. All of those elements are all within our Thrive MSP 2040 as a coordinated plan. And now we're moving into that next cycle, moving that planning horizon out to 2050.
So, thank you for that. We're at time, however. I will go a few extra minutes just because we have two quick items left. But I want to highlight the last two comments, Ms. Beckman's and Ms. Paddock's. I think Ms. Beckman really tried to pull this back into sort of our mission here, which is structure and governance. And so to that end, if you could provide us, this was very helpful, by the way, and thank you, and really great discussion from the members. But what would be helpful, I think, for me personally, and maybe others, would be if, and I know that you talked about the Metro Area Supply Committee, for example, the counties and who's involved, but some kind of organizational chart, like, of these two divisions, and who's responsible for what. And I think that gets to Ms. Paddock's question, which is, the setting that vision. And yes, we have Thrive 2040 in these documents, but then who's putting these together, and how are people involved in putting them together? I think this vision question is very important. And so, I think if you could just provide the committee with maybe just an org chart of each of these two divisions, I would find that very, very helpful. And then sort of the public inputs into those systems, I think would help us as we, look at organizational structure. So I just wanted to sort of put a little bookend to that conversation and to thank both of you so much, because these documents are helpful. I thought the Q&A was very helpful as well. So we'll continue to engage with you as we move forward. Two quick things, members, before we adjourn. First of all, is there anyone from the public? We sort of started a tradition here, and I want to keep it going. No one has signed up to testify virtually, but is there anyone in the room from the public that wishes to comment or testify on anything you heard today? I will ask members, there is a document in your packets dated September 18th from Richard Adair and Barry Shady. They give some ideas for structure and some background moving forward. I encourage everybody to take a look at that. Last item here, we dug into some of the questions that Representative Koznick had raised in the last meeting. And so we don't have a lot of time to go through all of this, but with the assistance also of Ms. Paddock and consulting with Minkoji, Ms. Kohler had also talked with some of the leadership at the LCC. We have kind of at least the outline of a proposal around public meetings and where they'll take place and how they'll take place. Chair Dibble and Ms. Beckman have been going over this as well. There will be meetings out in the public. The question is making sure that those conform with the open meeting law. And so we've been kind of digging into that a little bit, and I just wanted Ms. Kohler to just summarize those discussions, and then we'll of course have a little bit more detail about where and when and how our public engagement meetings will take place, but wanted to answer the good questions that Representative Koznick raised at the end of last meeting. Ms. Kohler.
Thank you, Chair Hornstein. I had a chance to talk to LCC leadership on how the LCC could support efforts to engage publicly. So one of the things we certainly can do is if you want to have evening meetings or go out to the public, we can support that. That would be easiest on our end if essentially some of the members are in the public, and we would also have members here. And we could set up a Zoom that way. And that way we could also conform very easily to open meeting laws. And that, members could split. So some members could be in the public, some members could be here if that wasn't, easier for them as well. So that is something we can support, and we do have ability to staff a few meetings in the evening to make it easier, I think, for public engagement, working hours and stuff like that. One of the other things that we discussed is the availability of members entirely going out, not having anything here. And of course, there you're a little more prone to running into open meeting, not meeting open meeting laws. If members want to engage on their own or in small groups out in the public or hold a listening session in their community and then bring that information back to the task force, that's certainly doable as well. So say if two of you wanted to host something in your community, that's okay, and then you could bring that information back and share it at a meeting. That would work as well. And I think Member Mary Paddock, she kind of came to the same conclusion somewhat on being able to do things here and in the.
Yeah, I thought we could practice by location. I thought we could have meetings set up just like normal and then have a remote connection so that people from Mankato or wherever, Duluth, could plug in, and then we could be one meeting.
Yeah, so that is certainly an option of, or even having a few people in different locations and being able to take testimony into essentially here. We could set that up.
And I think Chair Cleavorn had similar experience with some other task forces that she's been on. So, members, we'll refine these ideas. We'll, discuss them at our next meeting, which will be on October 11th. And until then, keep your ideas and suggestions coming. We are working on an agenda for that. Did you want to have the last word here? Oh, Senator Dibble.
So, Mr. Chair, my goal will be, I assume with your blessing, to continue to lead this public input effort. I'm feeling the passage of time. And as we start moving quickly into holiday season, as well as, the month of January, in which I think we're reserving for rolling out the draft and finalizing the draft, we're needing to get more specific very quickly. So my goal is by the next meeting, have a proposal for the task force to consider with respect to all of the elements we just discussed, dates, times, modalities, et cetera. Also, just to forewarn everyone, I'm going to be myself remote on the 11th. So
okay.
I'll be doing that from that screen over there. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. So is there any other discussion or questions? Yeah, Ms. Keller.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Chair Hordenstein. I just wanted to comment as well. I know that with the discussion last week, I did add on the task force just to get testifiers if they wanted. That's being sent out in all our public communications. It's on the calendar. And so that is being put out into the public. As well, I do have a form that can be posted. It's not live right now. That can be posted to the website to get input. Actually, Rep. Cleavorn, you have something I believe in your aging task force similar. That's where I got the idea. And also Senator Dibble's proposal. So if there's any particular questions that you would like me to include on that form, I would greatly appreciate that input. Or if you just like kind of an open question, if that is preferred, but I can get that live after this meeting.
Ms. Paddock.
Somebody at the last meeting, it might have been Representative Claiborne, mentioned that there might be an opportunity for people to testify in kind of a closed session, those people who might feel vulnerable if they talked about what's on their minds. Is that a possibility? I'm thinking particularly of Met Council employees.
Well, I mean, we can look through, I think that there's certainly whistleblower type of protocols. I think if this comes up, we will certainly, look at that within the law and making sure that it conforms with the open meeting law. But I don't necessarily foresee that. But Chair Cleavorn.
Thank you, Ms. Paddock. I'm not sure it was me. I don't think so, but we do, on the Legislative Task Force on Aging, we don't require that people put their address. It's optional, but we do require a zip code. So it maybe just could be that they're allowed to put information in through the public portal without using a name. It would be something we would have to discuss.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, I don't see any other comments or business before the task force. Thank you again for a very productive meeting, and we'll see you either in here or virtually on October 11th. We're adjourned.
Recording stopped.
Are you?